Good evening, good afternoon, good morning for everyone. Today we start again sixth webinar series of Oracle's Eye Innovative webinar series. And now today we have a special program. First part, we will discuss about presbyopia. Presbyopia can be corrected with intraocular approach and corneal approach. We will have debate about that. Of course, intraocular or corneal approach, this is sometimes each case has difference. We cannot discuss anyway some special cases, but also very important speakers will inform us advantages of different approach for presbyopia. Our first speaker is George Waring. He is very nice, very valuable friend of mine, very old friend from US. He's from Emory University Waring Vision Institute director. He will present us intraocular lens, and then immediately we will start corneal approach, and we will have panel discussion with very valuable panelists, Dr. Supi Taneri and Dr. John Marshall with Michael Mrohan. Now we are happy to listen to you, George.
Thank you, Eileen, and thank you all for the opportunity to participate. I am very excited to be with this esteemed group, and a big fan of Oracle's and Eye Innovation. I think it's an amazing program that you all put together. So I've been tasked with the discussion of the merits of IOLs in presbyopia correction. And this is kind of fun because everybody that we're going to be sharing thoughts with today are not only close friends, but I just respect them like no other. So this is going to be just kind of fun to kind of go through. Here are my financial disclosures, and I'm going to do this from a sort of a broader based view. I'm not going to be just only talking about IOLs, which many of us are familiar with. It's really more of the decision-making process and why more and more we are choosing IOLs as our procedure of choice for presbyopia. And this is a super hot topic with over 4.2 billion presbyopic eyes worldwide in the year 2020. There's a lot of opportunity to help people. And the age-old question is, do we do this on the cornea or do we do this on the lens? Historically, there was more patient acceptance with the corneal procedures, considered less invasive, performed in a laser suite and less expensive. But with the lens approach, this addresses the source of the problem. It can improve visual quality, it's a permanent solution, and it can be therapeutic in certain instances as well. Some of you may be familiar with these three letters, DLS, or the dysfunctional lens syndrome. This was an attempt to characterize and systematically the aging stages of the human crystalline lens that allows us to make good decisions, not only to educate our patients, but to help create a framework with how we approach the different stages and proposed stages of the aging lens. And this has now interestingly been accepted as by the American Academy of Ophthalmology as a clinical entity and is being increasingly used worldwide in the terms of in this context. And so we think of the aging stages really in three ways: primarily presbyopia, hard aberrations, and lens opacities, and we've staged accordingly as we age through time. And this is my esteemed colleague and lucky for me, my wife wrote an important paper in the year 2007 that actually characterized the hard aberrations of the age-related cataract. And we've been looking at this earlier in the stages of dysfunction because this does occur earlier in life. You'll see these pictograms in the ophthalmic throwaway journals on looking at the different stages of the aging lenses as we've described it. And it's just really interesting when we think about other subspecialties like the surgical correction of glaucoma. just imagine how many different ways we have to address glaucoma these days. But look at this. I mean, this really warrants consideration for a standalone subspecialty for the or subspecialty just for the surgical management of presbyopia. There's so many different options. So we're going to be focused, no pun intended, in the bottom right corner, really looking at lens-based procedures. And over the last decade, we've studied the aging changes with objective measurements, looking at anywhere from anything like densitometry to point spread functions and retinal image, assessing objectively optical quality from the aging lens, and have published on this. And now this is a hot topic now with the emerging technologies for presbyopia drops too, looking at, and this is my eye here. Luckily I see well for distance, but as you can see, I'm wearing reading glasses now. And so, this is somewhere where I might be very interested in a pharmacologic intervention. But more and more, we're looking at these early presbyopes, not so much incipient, but manifest. And really, where historically we would think more about a corneal-based solution, we're really thinking more about a lens-based solution earlier on in life. Once we get to the second stage defined by lens opacities, and you can see the retinal image quality worsening, it really is sort of a no-brainer to do a lens-based procedure from our perspective, because you're not just fixing the emetropia, you're improving image quality, not to mention the progressive nature of this disorder. And I think what has really been the big ticket item for us over the last few years, changing our practice patterns, shifting not only from stage 2 for IOL intervention, but to stage 1 for IOL intervention, was that of the AOS thesis from my former mentor, my current mentor, but former fellowship mentor, Dan Dury, when he looked at with contact lenses and what amount of ametropia and anisometropia, that is, can induce a drop in stereopsis. And it turns out as low as 0.75 diopters creates a statistically significant drop in stereopsis. So I want that to marinate, and I want that to sink in, because it's hard to maintain that with a corneal-based solution. And so when we, not only now are we talking about things like objective image quality, here's a ray tracing device that has a dysfunctional lens index built in, where we can actually separate out with some attempt internal aberrations from whole eye aberrations. There's a new Pentacam that we have that also allows us to do this with a integrated wavefront sensor. And so here we have somebody in their 50s coming, late 50s for LASIK, but we look and see, hey, their corneal image quality looks great, but we've got some internal aberrations that we probably want to address. You can't do that with a corneal-based solution. So, and a number of years ago, and this pilot study actually was done in, I think, 2013 or 2014. We just looked at a series prospectively of refractive lens exchange patients and looked at densitometry on the left and ocular scatter index on the right prospectively to see, can we improve these objective surrogate measurements of image quality by doing lens replacement and relative to healthy LASIK controls. And we found that we absolutely were improving image quality beyond refraction and refractive correction. This was image quality correction by doing lens-based procedures. So we look at we've kind of crafted a management algorithm that we've tailored to in our clinics, in our standard operating procedures, where again, we might look at this with early, maybe a pharmacologic solution. For somebody with low myopia, we might consider just doing a LASIK in one eye. But more and more, we're really looking at a lens-based procedure. And again, this is just kind of a glimpse of how we do it in our clinic. More and more, we're doing this at the lens. Historically, it was for high hyperopes we were doing lenses, then moderate myopes we were doing lenses, then low myopes, then plano presbyopes. But ladies and gentlemen, we're now actually looking at this more and more, even for low myopes earlier in life. And that was a real a mind bender. We just weren't even thinking about this 5 years ago. But why are we doing this? Well, it addresses presbyopia at the source. It improves image quality where lens opacities exist. It obviates the need for future cataract surgery. It may be useful where corneal refractive procedures are not indicated. And it preserves or provides stereopsis, like you heard me say. And what really changed our pattern of thinking is that we believe maintenance of stereopsis increases patient satisfaction. More and more, our refractive lens patients were just happier than our monovision LASIK patients. And we're formally studying this now, but it has completely changed our practice patterns. These procedures take the same amount of time, refractive lens exchange and LASIK. They both have their relative risks and benefits. And this is something that has increasingly spread in terms of patient interest, where historically it was the hardest discussion we had. Now, where patients would say, what, you want to take my lens out and run out the door? Now we actually, in some cases, have to talk them out of lens replacement and into LASIK if we feel it's safer, because this has become, there's so much interest for this. And not only that, but because our patient satisfaction is higher, and therefore the word of mouth is much higher. So our practice has really embraced this. We've studied it. We've studied it for a long time objectively, and we feel like we have a scientific basis where, given the appropriate informed consent and the appropriate discussion, that we feel that this is what is best for our patients in many cases. It's not that we wouldn't do a corneal-based procedure on these patients. We have a low threshold for refractive corneal enhancements if we need to do this, and we set the stage for that in advance. But in the future, we're working on things like refractive index shape changing that is not ready for prime time, but may not be off in the distant future, where we can do enhancements on these IOLs directly in the clinic with femtosecond lasers. So in summary, the dysfunctional lens syndrome is just a proposed way to characterize the aging changes of the human crystalline lens, and RLE should be considered for presbyopia treatment. It treats the source of the problem, it improves quality of vision, and it maintains stereopsis, which we believe improves patient satisfaction, and careful risks and benefits should be considered. And I just want to personally thank Dr. John Marshall, who we have as a permanent panelist in Oracles, for offering this quote to our profession. And John, I use this on just about every lecture I give. Why should the cornea suffer for crimes of the lens? And with that, I rest my case. Thank you.
George, it was really amazing presentation. Thank you so much. We will discuss your presentation after Dr. John Cheng presentation, which is about corneal approach for presbyopia solution. John Cheng is from Hong Kong. At the moment, time difference between Hong Kong and Europe and US. We will present you all from recorded version. And we will listen now, John Cheng. Thank you so much. I hope he can hear us later.
Hello, this is John Cheng from Hong Kong. I'm going to share with you today my experience with cornea wavefront surgery against aberration-free. I have no financial interest related to this talk. Why is wavefront treatment necessary? Well, refractive surgery now is highly accurate, but visual quality and night vision is still not perfect. Now, aberrations, as you know, are mainly from the cornea, and the customized ablation, the wavefront cornea surgery, corrects either cornea aberrations or total aberrations. The cornea aberrations remain constant throughout life, whereas total aberrations can change over time because of vitreous opacities and cataracts. And therefore, greater importance have been attached to the treatment of cornea aberrations. Now, there are two profiles. The more regular one, which is aberration-free, and now the more a newer one called the corneal wavefront surgery. Now, both profiles can overcome the dysphotopsia produced by the induced spherical aberration in the LASIK correction. Aberration-free does a sphere cylinder and the induced spherical aberration, and corneal wavefront does that too, as well as the preoperative cornea higher order aberration. So it gives you better visual outcomes and theoretically better night vision. And there's also obviously because of reduction of higher order aberration. Now, both are safe and effective in virgin eyes. There are studies showing this. And these studies mostly either correct all the higher order aberration, but that consumes a lot of tissue, or there are higher order aberration that minimize the depth of volume just to save tissue. And some select and treat the more significant higher order aberrations. And then there are other higher order aberrations based on surgeon's decision without explicit description in the literature. So, as you know, corneal irregularities are converted to Zernike polynomials here like a pyramid, and can be treated completely, or we can actually selectively treat each individual higher order aberration. Now, corneal wavefront treatment has already been done, as I mentioned, and they have been reported to be highly effective. But as I said, they are more tissue consuming. So in order to save tissue, we treat only the clinically significant ones. Now, higher order aberrations are considered clinically significant when the individual higher order aberration items are more than 0.2 microns, or roughly 0.25 diopters. Okay, anything less than that is considered noise and repeatability based on experience of the surgeon. However, studies have shown that some aberrations were good and could be retained without compromising visual quality. So if you treat all of them, it may not necessarily be good. So the Applegate did a study and found that higher order aberrations to 2 radial orders apart, when they're 2 each order, you can see that 2, 3, 4, but the 2 radials apart with the same sign, -2, -2, they actually combine to increase vision. So if you remove both of them, you actually decrease the vision. Now, the higher order aberrations that have the same radial order, on the same radial order, okay, 4, 4, 4, radial order 4, they actually combine to worsen vision. So you should remove all of them. So you should look at these and selectively, rather than either remove half of it or all of it, because you don't necessarily improve the vision, and also you're consuming more tissue. Now, as coma and spherical aberration have the highest impact on visual acuity, we have decided to correct only the spherical aberration in the primary coma when they reach a clinically significant relevant level that is more than 0.25D. In fact, all these times when doing it, we really haven't seen anything that have been clinically significant, that is more than 0.25 in the aberrations, except the spherical aberration and the comas. Now, we did a retrospective analysis using the Amaris 1050 laser, and we treated the eye with more higher order aberration with the corneal wavefront, and the other eye with aberration free. Okay, so if they are comparable, you already actually achieve success because we're treating the worst eye with corneal wavefront. So if it's better, then you know definitely it works. So we, as I said, we treated the eye with the primary coma or spherical aberration that was worse with corneal wavefront, and only higher order aberrations that are in the orange color, which is 0.25D, that is above the noise level that is clinically significant, or if it's red, it's 0.5D. So that's very significant clinically. Okay, the ones that have no color means we don't actually treat them. We're only treating the ones that have actually the orange or the red. So we selectively treating, and obviously we make sure they're not the same radial order, or they're not the 2 radial orders apart. If they are 2 radials orders apart, we actually leave them behind. So this is how we do. And both pre-op and post-op, we measure the corneal higher order aberration. The surgeon will select the best optical zone for each patient, making sure it's beyond the dim light pupil size. The pre-op selection was based on the optical zone treated, and the analysis is set at 6 millimeters. We did the usual UDVA, CDVA, and test manifest refraction. And total of 34 patients, 68 eyes, with an average of 88 follow-up. We included myopia or myopic astigmatism. We intended a slight overcorrection with our patients, and age under 37, and spherical equivalent less than minus 6.5, and astigmatism less than 3 diopters, and pre-op BCVA has to be better than 20/20. So we excluded severe dry eyes, patients with epithelial problems, or shorter follow-up than 3 months. So this is the result here. You can see there's a slight overcorrection, the sphere, intentional overcorrection, and comparing the, this is corneal wavefront, this is aberration-free. You can see that it's a little bit more closer to 0.25, okay? And the cylinder, very close, no clinical difference, but the aberration-free is slightly statistically significantly better. Now, as in terms of accuracy, the post-op refraction, the corneal wavefront is 100% within half a diopter of astigmatism, and with the aberration-free 94% within half a diopter. All patients 100% within 3/4 of a diopter. And aberration-free does a little bit better, a little bit more myopic shift, whereas the corneal wavefront tends to be a little bit more hyperopic result. And with uncorrected distance vision, 52 versus 64% corneal wavefront aberration-free in 2015, but 100% 2020 with the corneal wavefront versus 97%. Corrected distance vision, this is the best way to assess if the treatment works. You can see that the corneal wavefront is stronger than the aberration-free, but both 100% 2020. So daytime vision, as you can see, is excellent. What about nighttime vision? As we know, we're targeting for better daytime and better nighttime vision. We looked at the same patients and we analyzed, and within this group, 21 were treated with spherical aberration, 18 with horizontal coma, and 20 with vertical coma. And if you look at this, the corneal wavefront minus means it's reduced. So this is reduced. Corneal wavefront is better than before surgery, whereas with aberration-free, this is plus, so it's actually worse. Okay, and with statistically significant difference. Okay, but at the minus AF minus CW, that is aberration-free minus CW, if the difference is more than 0.2, then it's clinically significant. So this is not really clinically significant different. With the horizontal coma, again, reduction in the horizontal coma in the corneal wavefront eyes, an increase in aberration-free with statistically significant difference in the two, but not clinically significant different. And then, and in this, the vertical coma, again, reduced, increased, statistically significant difference, but this time 0.22, more than 0.2. So this is clinically significant. The patient should feel an improvement in the vertical coma. Okay, so now the change in high order aberration is really just to repeat: reduced in horizontal and spherical aberration in vertical coma, increased in the corneal wavefront, and this is again is total RMS. Okay, in the group spherical aberration, corneal wavefront less, so each group is less, and total high order aberration in corneal wavefront is reduced. This is comparing the EX500, the Contura, which is corneal wavefront surgery also, with 2 other studies using the Schwinn doing the corneal wavefront, trans-PRK, and this is our study that is LASIK corneal wavefront surgery. And in terms of 2015, we're only 53% versus over 60% in the other eyes, in the other studies, but we're 100% 2020 versus, well, 93, 98, 99. So really comparable. In the safety, we did not lose any vision at all. With the Contura EX500, 0.43% lost 2 lines or more, and 1 line loss is really not clinically significant. So safety is very, very good. Okay, no lines lost. And in terms of spherical equivalent, within half a diopter, as you know, we overcorrect our patients a little bit, and we have significantly more higher myopes, and so it's a little less. But within cylinder, within half a diopter, 92, 95, 97 versus 80%, and the Allegretto. And in terms of reduction, we have reduction in spherical aberration. Okay, this is increase in D2 studies, and the horizontal coma and vertical coma is reduced versus the other studies. In summary, corneal wavefront effectively reduces spherical aberration, vertical coma, and horizontal coma that are more than 0.2 diopters as compared to aberration-free. It had clinically significant reduces vertical coma and statistically significant reduction in spherical aberration, horizontal coma, and vertical coma. Corneal wavefront yields good and comparable visual outcomes compared with aberration-free, but corneal wavefront have higher percentage receiving BCVA in 2015, 82% versus 74%. And as you know, the worst eye was treated with corneal wavefront, and we achieved 100% 2020, and none of the eyes lost, not even one eye. So this method is very safe. Thank you.
What are you doing with patients who are coming to you for laser vision correction, who are, you know, plus 40, moving towards the presbyopic age range? Are you looking to do some form of monovision
yes.
in these eyes? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So what's your standard approach there?
Yeah, in our study, it's really for younger patients. As I mentioned, our patients, this group is all under 38. This is probably what we do. Once they're over 38, and you know, from 38 to 40, I back off in one eye, so I tend to undertreat one eye, but I don't intentionally do monovision. In patients who are over 40, then I would recommend monovision. Over 45, I actually do some presby LASIK.
Okay, and what with presby LASIK, what is your standard treatment approach?
I adjust the spherical aberration. Actually, I use the EX500 to do that. It's similar to it's kind of like a laser blended vision. So I increase the spherical aberration, or what we call the Q value, especially in the non-dominant eye. So as well as some monovision, I increase the spherical aberration. For that eye, it has an increased depth of focus. So the non-dominant eye, I'm targeting usually about 150 diopters. These are for the presbyopes, so that they can see the computer and they can see the near. With the distance eye, it depends. If the patient needs very good, distance vision, then I just do a standard, aberration-free type treatment. If they're mostly near, then I would consider doing that eye with the increased depth of focus as well, Q adjustment.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Chang, for joining us on Oracles for this edition.
Thank you.
So we listened a very nice presentation from John Chang. Now I would like to ask panelists their comments, their questions. Is there any comment or question?
Yeah, I have a question for George, because I'm curious, very curious about your new reading glasses. You mentioned you're looking forward to getting presbyopia drops. So my question to you is, why would you like presbyopia drops where you wake up in the morning, you cannot see your watch, then you're putting in a drop, you have to wait 30 minutes until the drops get effective, then they get effective over a period of about 2 hours, and then they deteriorate their effectiveness. And if you look at the studies, you're basically just gaining 3 lines of near vision, where the control, which was the placebo, already gained 2 lines in vision. So, to my opinion, are we just putting water into ice? And why would you want that?
It's a great question, Michael. And I had the pleasure of serving as the lead investigator for the Allergan presbyopia drop, which will be the first to market if it's FDA approved, which we anticipate it should be. So that's not exactly the data that came out of that study. It actually was a 3-line difference relative to control. And this is something that had an onset within an hour. And so, but as you know, better than most people, there are at least 4 to 5 different drops on the market. So I think what you mentioned is a real realistic kind of hybrid analysis maybe of all drops coming that with available or pilot data. So not all drops are created equal. First, some have different mechanisms of action. And the way that we see this is a bridging technology. So to your point, I'll be as excited about putting drops in as I am putting glasses on, frankly, meaning not excited. And so what I'm really excited about is getting my eye fixed here at some point. And that's the real question that if we just went around and did a roundtable and, well, what would you have done and when? That's kind of the real fun discussion. So I don't anticipate that being my long-term solution for me nor anybody else. It's a gateway solution for when it first happens to have an alternative through the day to putting on reading glasses on and off through the day. And the top line data suggests that this should be safe and effective in a way that can really bring help with quality of life. The PRO data, this all looks great. So it's, and nothing else, it's going to raise awareness too about what presbyopia is and what's next when you get sick of taking drops, or if drops aren't for you and glasses aren't for you, then it comes back into this realm of discussion.
As a long-term presbyope, I've never quite seen the point of constricting my pupils so that I can read the number plate of the car that I smash into. And so I have great difficulty understanding the logic of pupillary constriction. We all know that in any optical system, the smaller the aperture, the better the focus and definition, etc. But I'm with Michael. I find this really very difficult forward movement. Commercially, it's terrific because you sell a lot of drops and a lot of people dribble the drops down their cheeks, etc. But as a long-term presbyope, I think these are just brilliant. I've got really good distance vision. I don't lose them. I don't spill food in them. And it's there when I need them. I'd like to sort of just go a little bit further into, and frankly, I'm really interested in the development in lenses over the years. What has slightly frightened me is with the degree of development in different companies with different focal zones and different principles in terms of giving me click stops for vision. So I lose my accommodatory, beautiful evolutionary system, and I end up with a series of click stops in terms of the different lenses. And I have to say that I haven't yet seen any of that technology that I would find attractive. So at the moment, I'm 2 years off 80. When I need my cataract procedure, I think at the moment I'm still going for a straight sphere with the blue blocker. And I just wondered, where you are in relation to the huge technology and which one you would advise me to have if you could convince me.
John, let me start with your first comments, which are really important ones. That was a big concern for the FDA about what are we giving up with a small aperture principle and pupil constriction. And Wiley-Chambers went so far as to require, for the first time, not only showing lines of near improvement, but also distance preservation. So the bar was set extraordinarily high for an eye drop. It was unbelievable. And actually, the top line data that came out met all the criteria where the distance vision was actually preserved, and they also hit their near vision marks as well. And it's kind of interesting because an emerging concept came out where it wasn't just constriction, it was modulation. So it's not just make it as small as possible. It actually still allows for movement with light in different lighting conditions, given the right concentration. And that was a little bit of an aha moment. We're always learning things as we go through that. And so, those are really valuable comments that were shared by the US FDA that set an extraordinarily high bar that was actually met, interestingly. So that can give us some confidence moving forward beyond just commercial opportunities, and that this, may be something to help with the early presbyopes. And, I couldn't agree more with your comments about the shortcomings of the optics and having so many options. And up until 3 years ago or 4 years ago, I would actually have said sort of the same thing about my own eyes. And as a result, we didn't do as much refractive lens exchange because of the optical shortcomings. And keeping in mind, as the representative US delegate on this panel, we're way more hamstrung than you all are. Remember, you have the luxury of being in the free world where you've got access to real amazing cutting edge technology. We're 10 years behind here. So enter extended depth of focus optics. That was a game changer in the US because it did create a broader depth of focus curve, but it left us lackluster on real reading, correction. So what we started doing, John, was in our clinic, we started combining extended depth of focus in the dominant eye with trifocality in the non-dominant eye. So we got as many click stops as possible, plus that additional near reading benefit. And then we covered the in-between with an EDOF. And that was just a personal concept that always made sense to me. First, we had EDOF. So we got our experience with that, realized we weren't hitting the mark for reading. Then we got trifocality much later than you all did, but realized that it was unforgiving in most eyes and had its shortcomings, as you mentioned. So we just took the approach out of the gate that we just combined, and believe it or not, I offer that solution in about 95% of my lens implants, both refractive lens exchange and cataract, and have done quite well. Not to say it's the final solution by any means. We definitely have to enhance more trifocals than ever. And there's some quality of vision issues with trifocality.
Supi, maybe I know you do both worlds, cornea and lens. So maybe my first question is, where's your cutoff? What is your criteria of moving to lens versus laser or other cornea procedure? And the second question is, why do you think having a free world of more options of lenses helps or doesn't help to do better service?
I like the last question. Greater choice isn't always helping you because none of the IOLs, even in the free world, is perfect. That's the dilemma we are still in. So I totally agree with George that if we had perfect IOLs, then at the age of 45, when presbyopia sets on, we should exchange the presbyopic lens. But as no IOL is perfect yet, I'm quite hesitant to do that. And as George has pointed out in his excellent talk, there are different devices now that help us guide us through this decision process in theory only, because I find them to be not repeatable enough. So I find with the HD analyzer or with the Pentacam or with the ACE or whatsoever, that sometimes young patients have a worse index than obvious cataractous lenses. That's my problem. I don't know how you have addressed this, George. The second thing is, as all the lenses are not perfect, they are, and I quote John Marshall again, they are offering static solutions to a dynamic problem. And that's our biggest disadvantage, even in the free world. So I tend to stay on the laser side as long as possible. But if there are opacities in the lens, or if the patient is asking for a whole range of vision correction from far to near, then I do multifocal. But in Germany, patients are more interested in perfect distance, and they tend to accept reading glasses more easily. So I prefer the laser approach, blended vision, because it can be corrected with spectacles if excellent night vision is required. And it can be enhanced in the future in 5 or 10 years, because laser vision correction has demonstrated to be extremely safe and effective right now, but and there's not much improvement to be expected. But I think the IOLs are going to be better in the future, and if we can do laser vision correction today, wait until the cataract develops, and then place the latest technology IOL into the eye. And I think that's why John has waited almost 80 years now.
And a solution for the special light sources for the pharmaceutical companies, they could adjust the pupil size with these things.
I am very sorry. I really don't want to disturb. We have limited time because I know Michael and Supi will move another meeting. I want to be on the time. So now we need to move next speaker. This is really wonderful discussion. We can discuss until the morning. So now our third speaker is, he is from UK. He will talk about new drug delivery technology. Philip Alexander.
Thank you very much. Let me just
share. Thank you for joining us.
So I'm Philip Alexander. I'm an ophthalmologist in Cambridge in the UK. And I'm very excited to speak to you today about Visus Nano. So this is a company that I co-founded 5 years ago. And we're a preclinical medical device company, and we're developing a drug-releasing intraocular lens implant to eliminate the need for eye drops after cataract surgery. So we've already heard about the tremendous advances in technology for the treatment of cataract, the various types of lenses that are available. But despite all of that, that improvement in both surgical technology and lens technology, we're still reliant in the vast majority of cases on the patient, because the patient needs to put the eye drops in to get a good visual outcome and a happy patient. And the problem with eye drops is that they can be difficult to administer. 93% of patients do not apply the drops correctly. And there's a growing patient appetite and a patient need for dropless cataract surgery without any eye drops postoperatively. So we have developed a drug-eluting lens implant. So without compromising the optical properties of the lens, our drug-releasing platform allows controlled, sustained release of multiple drugs from the haptics of the intraocular lens implant to avoid the need for eye drops. So far, we've attached 3 drugs to the lens, so we can attach a corticosteroid, a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, and an antibiotic onto the haptics of the IOL. And this has obvious benefits. So it can improve compliance because it doesn't require the patient to use any drops at all. It enhances the patient's experience because it simplifies their post-operative care. But of course, we are expecting it to improve outcomes as well, not just because of the improved compliance, but because we avoid the complications associated with topical medication like corneal melts, which are associated with non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, and preservative toxicity from eye drops. We are in the process of developing another additional drug, an antifibrotic, which we hope will reduce the incidence of posterior capsular opacification. We've done some market research to look at whether there is an appetite for this, and there is a very strong appetite for dropless cataract surgery, both from surgeons and from patients. And there is also a reimbursement potential, because in the US there is already a licensed intracameral corticosteroid treatment available, and there is a reimbursement code for it. So we expect that there would be a reimbursement code for a dropless drug-eluting lens implant. We know from our market research that 81% of surgeons use 3 different types of drops post-surgery. And the commonest drop regimen is 4 weeks of corticosteroid, 2 to 4 weeks of non-steroidal, and 5 to 7 days of antibiotic. And that can be confusing for patients because it's multiple bottles with different regimens. But we have, as I've said, managed to encapsulate all 3 of these drug classes. So this is our progress so far. We've managed to encapsulate the drugs into our polymer drug delivery system. We have shown attachment of our polymer system to the haptics of the lens. We have, using an in vitro model, a PKI model, showed release of the drug from the lens, and we can demonstrate controlled and sustained release, and I'll show you some data in a minute. We know that the drugs that we are using are safe and effective inside the eye, and we've conducted in vivo rabbit studies which confirm that there is no adverse reaction. So this is a graph showing the dexamethasone release profile. So most surgeons require their patients to use dexamethasone eye drops for approximately 30 days after surgery, 28 days. And we know from the FDA regulation that the dexamethasone therapeutic range is somewhere between 3 and 8 micrograms per milliliter. And we've been able to achieve that. So we've used this PKI model from Opsutics based in London. So this uses a model of the eye that mimics the aqueous turnover exactly. So the advantage of this is that it doesn't involve any animal models, but it would mimic the effects of doing an in vivo PK trial. But of course, with this in vitro study, we can sample the eye as often as every hour to determine the concentration of the drug that we need. So this is our dexamethasone dosing, and we've demonstrated that we've got a therapeutic dose for the full 30 days after surgery. We know from the European Society of Cataract and Refractive Surgeon trial that cefuroxime is highly effective in reducing the risk of endophthalmitis. And we also know from that trial, from that paper by David Seal et al., that the minimum inhibitory concentration of cefuroxime needs to be above 8 micrograms per milliliter to prevent infection. And so we have deliberately shortened our drug release for cefuroxime to ensure that we get a high dose of cefuroxime for the time that is when the eye is most at risk of infection, which is the first 7 days. These are some results from our rabbit studies which show that there's no adverse reaction from the implantation of a drug-eluting lens. So there's no adverse reaction from the polymer or from the injection process of the lens, drug-eluting lens going inside the eye. This study is actually showing the results of ketorolac, and it shows that the amount of inflammation in the treated eyes was less, as you would expect, compared to the control eyes. And it also shows a sustained effect. We've been working with a strategic partner who has conducted some optical quality testing of our combined product. So we have attached our drug delivery system to a commercially available lens, and we've demonstrated that it does not affect the dioptric power of the lens, it does not affect the optical quality of the lens, and it does not affect the injection process. So the lens can be injected into the eye as normal. We have some intellectual property based on how our polymers attach to the lens. We've filed a PCT and we've performed a freedom to operate search. And our patent was granted in Europe and in the US, and we have some divisional applications filed. The reimbursement process varies depending on whereabouts in the world the patient lives. So in the US and in Japan, the cost of eye drops is much higher than it is in Europe. But we're in the process of conducting a cost utility analysis. So even in countries where the cost of eye drops is relatively low, the benefit of having a drug-eluting lens, because the patient doesn't need to put the drops in and it doesn't require any carers or assistants to put the drops in, can be demonstrated. There are a number of other products available at present which are trying to achieve dropless cataract surgery. Most of these are single dose, single drug solutions, and most of them will require a secondary procedure, some other kind of modification to the normal surgical technique. But our device does not require any change to surgical technique. You just put in the lens, inject the lens as normal, and you don't have to do anything different. This is our team. So Joanna Gould and Darren Pitt are my co-founders, and they are CEO and Chief Scientific Officer respectively. David Bailey has a huge wealth of experience in ophthalmology, having worked in J&J and Bausch & Lomb, and then more recently at Star Surgical. Martina Picardo has lots of experience with early stage companies in the UK. And Paul Rosen, who I'm sure you all know, is a very prominent ophthalmologist and previous president of the ESCRS. And Rob Lowe is our other clinical advisor and is a veterinary ophthalmologist. So thank you very much. So we're Visus Nano. We're developing a drug-eluting lens implant for use for patients having cataract surgery, which is completely compatible with the current model of care. It improves compliance, it enhances patient experience, and we expect it to improve outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very nice presentation. Do you have any question about this presentation? I have a question. Sorry, yes.
Well, we discussed this slightly before, but in some ways, this is a new technology, putting the drug in haptic rather than coating the lens. But virtually all devices that have gone in the past have shown a typical pharmaceutical time course to that which you have, i.e. there is enhanced release and then an exponential decay. And the difficulty has been in the past trying to control the rate of decay and the concentration. Now, you've chosen to load to a level such that when you get your exponential decay and reach an asymptotic level, then it's still within the treatment regime. But that means you need to load it higher to begin with. And I noticed the nano in your name, and what several companies are currently trying to do, especially in the cardiovascular field, is to actually introduce pharmaceuticals in devices in which you control the release of one or several drugs by controlling the nanopore size and the almost shattering of nanopores. And there's a company in Guildford called CySat that has been very successful in developing that sort of model for treating skin with slow release. And I just wonder, how you, if you think there is a problem, or you just decided, okay, if I load enough in, it doesn't matter that I get this exponential, or are you thinking about trying to control release in a more progressive fashion? Because obviously the big killing here will be retinal and vitreal treatments. So looking to the future, and I'm sure you have, what's your potential theory? Are you going that way or not? You decided that you got what you want, or?
So we've primarily looked at the cataract market because we know that the cataract market is short-lived, and we know that the need is huge because the number of patients having cataract surgery is so vast. I don't particularly see that slight peak of the drug concentration early on as a problem, because as long as it doesn't reach a toxic level, that is actually what we want clinically, because the inflammation in the eye is going to be greatest shortly after the surgery. So we do actually want a higher dose of these drugs early on. We've managed to achieve different drug release profiles because we've used different polymer blends. So the polymer blends that release at over 30 days are different from the blends that release over 7 to 10 days. And we have looked at nanopores. I think the largest nanopores usually are about 40 nanometers. And I think the dexamethasone is a 150 nanometer molecule. So I don't know how realistic it is to use nanopores for drug release.
CySAF go from really sub-nanoparticle size up to 30 microns. So there is a big range now.
Okay, interesting, very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So do you...
Great paper, sorry.
Do you think with this technology, end of operation, we inject anterior chamber antibiotic, do you think this prophylaxis, endophthalmia prophylaxis, will not be used in the future?
I think that we should still use the antibiotic as we do at the moment. So we would inject the antibiotic intracameral cefuroxime as we do. We know that the injection that we give loses its, the concentration after 8 hours is below the minimum inhibitory concentration. So after 8 hours, the injection that we've given has lost its effect. But this antibiotic attached to the lens would last for 5 days, 7 days.
Okay, this is wonderful. Yes, Sophie?
Great presentation. Thank you. Very impressive. However, the most established slow release market, I think, is in gynecology, where they use intrauterine devices for birth control. And actually, they last up to 5 years, in spite of the exponential decay. But as in ophthalmology, we were not so successful yet. And what do you think, how stable from patient to patient is the release of these drugs? Because if we, for instance, have a rapid release of dexamethasone, then we could have pressure spikes or other side effects. What will affect the release of the medical ingredients?
Yes, thank you. That's a very valid point. So the model that we are using, the in vitro model, has taken its parameters based on the average flow of the average aqueous size and flow and turnover in patients who are of cataract surgery age. So of course there is a difference in patients who have very deep anterior chambers and large eyes compared to patients who have small eyes and narrow angles. But in terms of eye drop concerns, intraocular pressure you mentioned, there is some evidence in the literature that if you give an intracameral dose of dexamethasone, you get less of a pressure effect than if you use eye drops. There's a paper by Shah from 2018 that demonstrates that. So, and remember that although we're giving these drugs inside the eye, we're avoiding all of the toxicity and the allergy that can be induced from eye drop administration. So I think that the variation inside the front of the eye, the anterior segment, is going to be, there will be some variation, but it will be tolerable. So even though some patients have slightly deeper anterior chambers, I think that we could probably still use a one-size-fits-all drug, one-size-fits-all device. Of course, in patients who are known to be allergic to cefuroxime, for example, we wouldn't be able to use that. That would not be appropriate.
Sure, but don't you think that age would be a factor too?
In what way?
Like in young patients, we observe a much shorter duration for posterior capsular ossification to occur, for instance. Or how about posterior capsular rupture? Would that affect the release of the drugs?
Yeah, and I think that's a very valid comment that I think probably, I mean, we haven't tested this device in the presence of an open posterior capsule, but probably it's not going to be appropriate in the presence of posterior capsular rupture. But fortunately, that is rare. And in terms of age, I mean, when I operate, I don't normally change my drop regimen based on the age of the patient. I'm not sure what your practice is, but I tend to give the same dose of drops to everyone, and that works, very effectively. And so I think in terms of intracameral or intracapsular dosing, we could achieve the same thing by using the same dose for everyone. And of course, there will be patients who need a little bit extra, who need, patients who are prone to uveitis, patients who have got pre-existing ocular morbidity will need some other kind of additional treatment. But I suspect that one device will be able to treat or at least alleviate the amount of drops for the vast majority.
There is a question from attending people. What kind and brand of intraocular lens would be used? And second question, Mohamed Goreishi, would the nano drug will be incorporated during manufacturing process of the lens?
Thank you very much. That's two very valid questions. So we have tried attaching our drug delivery platform to multiple commercially available lenses from all the leading brands. We know that we can attach successfully to the hydrophilic acrylic and hydrophobic acrylic without any problem at all. We've conducted all of our subsequent studies on the market leading IOL, but we are confident that we could just switch to a different IOL. In terms of would the drug be incorporated? Yes, so we anticipate that the drug would be incorporated at the time of manufacture. And then that combined product, the drug attached to the lens, would then need to go through the standard ISO or ANSI testing. So it would have to go through sterilization and injection testing and compression testing and shelf life. But yes, it would be incorporated at the time of manufacture. So it wouldn't require any intervention by the surgeon. The surgeon would open the lens and inject it as normal.
Michael has a question. Yes.
So I think this is an exciting journey we're going here with the oracles today. So first we learned the future is eye drops. So now I'm learning the eye drops are the history. So that's an interesting journey here. That's great. But I really love your technology, and I think you made a lot of rabbits happy so far. So can you elaborate now, what is your translation now from going from the rabbit to actually first in human use clinical trials? What are the challenges you foresee? And I think, are you going to go with one drug? Are you going to with all three drugs? When can we expect clinical results? Let's say in first in human use, and then let's say in a phase 2 study. So what is your pathway, and maybe share with us with your challenging or questions in the clinical pathway going ahead?
Yeah, so we've done a safety study at the beginning. That was a relatively small study. We're now going to conduct a much larger animal study because we want to demonstrate the safety and efficacy of both a single drug and then multiple drugs and they're released from an IOL. And then once we've done that, then we're going to go down the regulatory route in humans. But it's probably too early to see, for me to discuss the human trials. But large animal study later this year.
We have a unique opportunity here with Chris. Chris, could you give some thought as to companies incorporating this in their lens manufacture? I mean, what sort of time base do you see on that for one of the major IOL companies?
Philip, should I disclose that I may have a bit of an interest here?
Sorry.
No, it's okay. No, I've been done some work with VisiNano. Personally, I think that this is a technology that would need to have the potential to be on every type of IOL. Because if you look at the market research that Philip presented, and the discussions that have been had with the doctors involved, it's very, very clear that, and we know this, you all know this, you have a personal preference in IOL. And so I think that will drive a lot of how things evolve, and the opportunity that VisiNano has to come to the market, because there's certainly an appetite for this approach, even though what has come before has not necessarily been successful, or has presented challenges that people didn't anticipate. So John, my personal belief is that it is something and that has to be available, at least offered up to, as many manufacturers as possible. But we'll see. That I don't, the path that the company takes, they're looking at all the options and everything, and it's in early stages. So I don't want to speak out of turn, but that's my personal viewpoint.
Chris,
on the direction.
The point I was trying to make here was, if Alcon has a successful lens, and now they've got to coat it with XYZ,
right,
to go through regulatory approval with the FDA for compound A, compound B, compound C, compound ABC. That's a long process, and I can see one approach could be a startup company such as we have, producing a product and getting that through. I think that's going to be an easier route than trying to get the Alcons of this world committed to FDA for 5-10 years. I don't know.
I think, John, you spin it around and you look at, both the FDA and the EU have established pathways that allow for, are more cognizant of the fact that there's drug delivery devices that are coming to the market, and that this is something that we're going to see more on a more frequent basis in ophthalmology. Secondly, I think there is a potential based on that and what I know of the definitions, that you could argue that what VisiNano is doing is a drug delivery device on its own. Mm-hmm. And so the potential is there to pursue a regulatory pathway. And I don't know if that's something that VisiNano has thought about, Philip, or...
That's right. And the other thing to say is that these are all drugs that are known to be safe inside the eye. So they're already approved drugs.
Well, produce a haptic and then get Alcon to clip the lens in. Sorry.
Great stuff.
Supi?
Eileen, I would be very much interested in hearing my dear friends George Roaring's comments on this, because in the US, the drugs are much, much more expensive than in Europe. And they have to be paid out of pocket, whereas in the US, in Europe, they are mostly covered by insurance. What do you think, George?
Oh, thank you, Sophie. And congratulations on your technology, Philip. This is very, very exciting work. You know, it is a real issue and a major barrier to care and compliance in the U.S., as Sophie mentioned. And the movement in the U.S. has been to compounded eye drops, so it's sort of an all-in-one formulation, and there's a number of commercially available compounding pharmacies now, and that's improved cost barriers. It's improved compliance. It's majorly streamlined the flow in the clinic and callbacks and all the confusion that we all have dealt with in the past. But we're seeing a tremendous amount of innovation, as we saw in the prior presentation that was so excellent, in drug delivery devices, whether it's intracanalicular, intracameral, drug elution in different ways. I mean, there's all kinds of new technology and development. And, you know, I am curious, Philip, are you all looking at, I imagine you're looking at extending this to things like glaucoma drops and where that's another low-hanging fruit, I would think. I understand you have to pick your horizons, but is that part of your discussion, and are you all thinking about that in the future?
Absolutely. So that's the next stage of our development, is to add different drugs, because we know that with some optimization, we think we can incorporate, you know, most drugs. Of course, we have to adjust the polymer blend accordingly. But yes, that's right. So we could then tailor, we could have different products depending on, you know, which patient is having the surgery. That's right. So glaucoma drugs or even anti-VEGF.
So maybe, Philip, here's the opportunity. You have a lot of very enthusiastic ophthalmologists, researchers online. So, you know, how can we help you?
Yes, that's exactly it, John. That's exactly it, because we're currently, you know, we're currently in the process of raising funds for our next round. But of course, it is very useful to hear these things, to hear that, you know, the need for eye drop is an obstruction to, you know, straightforward and easy care and compliance. And it would be great to have to all of you, you know, I'll probably be calling on you in the next few weeks and months for your opinions, and you know, we're going to have to get this through the regulatory approval process, and I'm sure I'll be contacting you separately.
Good luck.
Garrick, welcome, Garrick. Very nice to see you.
Hello.
Hello,
Sorry to
Gary.
be late. I was in another symposium.
So maybe before we move over to Gerd and Vance, so the conclusion of this discussion is eye drops are dead. Long live eye drops. And by saying so, you know, we're going to have a fantastic session now about the future of other drug dilution. So Gerd, welcome. And is Vance already here?
Yeah, where's Vance?
No, Vance isn't on yet, but I think let's Garrett, if you want to kick things off, and then if Vance is able to join. There was a bit of confusion about the time, but they had indicated that he was going to be here, but maybe he's running a few minutes late.
Okay. Actually, I also prepared.
I can do it with you.
A small lecture, actually, if you want, I can share that with you.
Would be amazing.
Okay.
Yeah, I can share several things with you. First of all, I am in the. Oh, you cannot see that. It's interesting with the background here. Let me see. Here it is.
You got there you go. There's your wine.
We're talking about wine now. And actually, in the future, when we repeat that thing, I will send some wine to Vance, and he will send some wine to me. And then we will do some wine tasting, talk about things. Not a huge thing, just a few minutes, I think, to refresh the Oracle seminar and exchange ourselves. And I don't know how I became a wine connoisseur. I am not, frankly speaking, but I live literally in a vineyard in my region, where my village where I live. When I open the window, I see all the grapes and everything, and everything here is around is about wine. And I can actually share with you a small presentation if you let me in. And you give me your screen here.
Go ahead. You can share.
I can share. Good.
Yeah.
So, of course, I have to do it the same way I always do a lecture. Yeah, with my same background. So we are here in Heidelberg, and the region is called Baden. It's a Baden mountain region here. In this context, these are my financial disclosures, so to say. And and I have to say that I drink also sometimes a good glass of beer. And I put actually this here because Eileen will know that that's Turkish beer.
Yes.
Yes, so some local.
Very familiar, yes.
Yes, and American beer. And I forgot actually German beer here. How could that happen? But it is okay because we're used to it anyhow. And the region where I live, there's a little castle here. There are always castles in Germany. Yeah, everywhere you walk, there's a castle on every hill, and we have a very nice area here where we have a lot of wine being harvested here. This region here since 800 to 1200 years. Yeah, the oldest settlement nearby is in Ladenburg, which was founded by the Romans over 2000 years ago. And the whole region is populated for a long time. And these wine grapes are dating back to the medieval age. They are very classical white wine grapes like Silvaner or Riesling. Everybody knows Riesling. And the idea is that the soil here, the earth is quite special. Yeah, it's a lot of limestone and porphyry in there, which is very important when these grapes grow. That they give this a certain very earthy taste, but also the wine, for example, the Riesling is a very fruity one, not too sweet, but it combines a lot of fruit senses such as pineapple, cherry, raspberry, apricot, everything is in there. Something actually when you drink this here, and I have to do it now professionally. Yeah, it's just for my lecture, it's important.
Yeah.
It has a very nice golden color actually. You cannot really see that. Oh, you see me here in the glass.
This is visible, very good visible.
Yeah, now it's I think it's visible. It's almost golden. It's very nice actually. Actually, I like it. I like this kind of lecture. I can drink, and you just have to watch me. Anyhow.
How do you feel when you drink?
No, it's okay. I don't know how I get home today, but it will be fine. These are some impressions from the area where we live, and this is a photo here from the mountain over the whole region. A specific wine I'm talking about here is this one, is a Riesling from the winery Strahlenburg or Strahlenberger Hof. This is used to be a gourmet restaurant also, and the winery has also the name. Strahlenburg is a castle, the name of the castle. They also have champagne, different types of champagne, a mixture here of Riesling and Silvaner, and here also, and it's made very traditional. So these grapes have a certain acid taste, but just a very balanced one. And when they got harvested, they will stay for 2 to 3 years, the Riesling, in wooden barrels in historic wine cellar, which also is made from limestone and porphyry. So the whole thing is on a basis that you have over the year, plus minus 1 to 2 degrees changes of temperature. Otherwise, it's completely stable. It's under the earth. It's in the cellar. It's like a Roman vaulted cellar, very old. I think I have even a photo. Yeah, something like this. And there it is kept for 2 to 3 years. There are no chemistry is put in there. They made this very, very traditional, and therefore this is really a very excellent white wine Riesling they have here. And I don't know what Vance will show us. I think I will send him a bottle of this and see what he is thinking about it, and I will see what I get in return from him and how good it is. Eileen can send me an FS pills. That's fine for me.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. So I'll say thanks. Thank you, Gerd. The idea is, yeah, this is great. More than
to listen from you. This is a very different topic. We forget all of our tiredness.
Yeah, exactly. So this is to announce, and as I said, I guess Vance got held up. This is to announce a new Oracles exclusive, which we're calling Wine of the Webinar. And that'll feature Garrett and Vance Thompson from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And they're going to grace us every webinar going forward with a little segment about wine. And we'll be including with the registration a varietal that people can go out and buy if they're interested in participating in our virtual wine tasting. And this is also to announce that Oracles is moving to Friday nights. So we're going to have a little Oracles happy hour, and the next date is June 18th, I believe, is the next date for the webinar.
Very quick question, Jarek. We have limited time, only 1 minute remained, I think. What is your favorite drink? What is your favorite wine?
Oh, I cannot really say that I have a favorite wine, because wine is changing, and it's depending on the year, and it also depends what kind of food you have with the wine and under what condition you drink it. So I'm not really so much into white wine Riesling drinking, but to certain food I drink that quite often. And the red wine, this is the whole story. We can really talk hours about that, why we would choose this or that red wine, for example. And I think Vance has some ideas about that. But this region here is more a wine region. It's kind of natural to have good wines. It's not like most people think, like Germany, they all drink beer. Yeah, we all eat pork feet, sauerkraut, and drink beer. That's for 99% of Germans, that is not really applicable, I have to say. And Michael is nodding, yeah, exactly. And maybe we can show a little bit a different side of Germany also, a more civilized with this little webinars.
So
Okay.
thank you so much. Really, it was wonderful moment, wonderful presentation. Really enjoy. Your presence are very valuable for us. Already Chris summarized. Next webinar we will announce again. Thank you so much.
June 18th.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.